Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the top decks heading into Pokemon World Championships. Obviously it's only a week away at this point, depending when this is released. I am super excited for the event. I will say now I'll be attending all 4 days, well, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So if you see me around, come say hi, come talk Pokemon. That's why I'm there, to share this hobby with everyone. So excited to play in it. I am playing in the London Open, so hopefully see some of you guys there as well. Other than that, I'll just be doing a ton of like side events. So like I say, come find me out, come play some events. That's not why you're here. You're here to find out the top decks, what I think is going to be highly played, what I think people should play. We're going to look at the top decks and then I'm going to suggest some rogue ones outside of the norm, or maybe switching up some top decks with slightly different techs to make them more viable. But let's get into it with arguably the best deck in format currently, Palkia Inteleon. Now, this doesn't really need any introduction whatsoever. It is, not even arguably, it's the best Pokemon in the format currently. Obviously, Palkia V and VStar, we've got the Subspace Swell, which is just a super powered version of Suicune with a lot more health and a cool VStar ability. Basically, it does 60 and then 20 for each bench Pokemon. Star Portal lets you attach energy from the discard pile. So this can get going quite quickly. It can hit hard. Its weakness, there's not many great electric Pokemon. You will see people teching stuff in to try and beat this, but I don't think there's a perfect Pokemon at the moment, which is what makes this so good. Obviously, it runs the Inteleon engine. There's stuff like Shady Dealings you can use to grab out anything you need when you need it. Honestly, I'm sick and tired of these things now. I cannot wait until they rotate. It's not long now. They should be gone the start of the year or end of this year. So yeah, not long. Just dig deep. Also Radiant Greninja to draw cards. Obviously throwing those energies away so you can recycle them with the V-Star ability. Just a ton of stuff has come together to make this deck really powerful. Water has a ton of support at the moment. I do think when we lose Inteleon, it could make it more difficult to run this deck. You're going to have to run it in different ways. Ways that don't work as well, because currently Inteleon can Aqua Bullet to take out stuff like Miltanks and things like that. Without this engine, without attackers, well, good water Pokemon that aren't Vs, you still got Greninja, but I don't know how much it will survive. It will definitely take a hit, but like I say, it's such a powerful Pokemon, it's still going to stick around. So it is a good shout for Worlds, but obviously being the best deck in format, or one of the best, it's going to have a target on its back, so we will look at a few variations of stuff trying to beat this in a moment. Let's just talk briefly on some of the trainers. For Irida has been like, people were a little unsure on Irida when it came out. I thought it was a really powerful card. It's one of the few predictions I made. I did think it would work incredibly well with stuff like VIP Pass, and it has. It's nice to see it making an impact now. Just a ton of uses. You can use it to use Cross Switcher early on and take easy knockouts on bench Pokemon. For example, if you're against a Pikachu VMax, you can bring up the Pikachu and knock it out quite easily. They're only 190 HP. That's happened to me more times than I would like to admit. So yeah, just a really good combination there. And then this is Isaiah Bradner's list. The rest of it's fairly standard. It is interesting that people opt for smaller Inteleon lines now. Obviously with the 1 Inteleon, 3 Sobble, 3 Drizzle. Not something that you would normally see outside of Palkia decks. But it's just how the format's changing now. You don't really need all of them. So yeah, it's an interesting list. It's one that obviously works well, proving itself in second place at NAIC. But like I say, other contenders for best decks would be Arceus Inteleon. Other contenders for best deck in format, I would say, is Arceus Inteleon. It's so difficult to play against. This runs the thicker Inteleon line. It's got the quick shooting and the Shady Dealings. Basically, it's going to use the Sharon's Care. Is going to recycle them with stuff like Palpad, so it could potentially pick up 4 different Arceus. It's so annoying to play against. Obviously, Drizzle and Inteleon can grab this out when they need it. They can grab Palpad when they need it, and they can just keep using and reusing. It's so hard to take a knockout. If you play something like Arceus, it can be impossible, or it can feel like it if you don't run some kind of tech for it. Yeah, I've been playing Arceus Pikachu, which we will get onto, and it struggles so much against this deck. Obviously runs the 2 big charms as well, just so it can get that extra tankiness so it doesn't get knocked out. It's got Manaphy and Dunsparce. Dunsparce obviously getting rid of the weakness, so it's so difficult to deal with this deck. It is obviously a good deck, but it's the most annoying deck in format. I have the least fun playing against this. It's the most anti-fun deck in format, but it's super consistent and it does what it needs to and it wins games. And it will continue to win games. It doesn't really have a weakness. Dunsparce makes sure there's none hitting into Arceus. I guess it has bad matchups against stuff that can take 1-hit knockouts. Stuff like, top of my head, Mewtwo. Obviously, Palkia can get up there. There's stuff like Gengar, but Big Charm gets out of reach of that. There's not a ton of stuff that can deal with it, honestly, which is why it's so good of a deck. But yeah, it's not one of my favorites, but I think it's going to be one that you're going to see a lot of. You're going to have to play a lot against. So I would say test against this. Yeah, just really consistent. Does what it needs to do. Really tanky deck. Really hard to take prizes against, which can make it very difficult. I would say this is probably... It's first or second. It's really hard to say which is which, but these are 2 decks that you need to worry about. They're 2 decks that you need to design your deck around. The majority of the format, I think it's something like 20-30% each of these decks. So that's like 40 to 60% of the format just there. So you do need to know how to play against these. You need to know how to beat them. So if you're trying to build something outside of the metagame, aim for these decks to beat. And we're going to move on to that now. I don't know if it's definitely not third place. It might be third place, but it's Arceus Flying Pikachu. I think Mew and possibly some Charizard variants are slightly better at the moment, but that could change. This is my favorite deck. This is obviously Azul Garcia's deck from NAIC. Get it right eventually. Basically, it's running the VStar to set up Pikachus, but you can also set up a Crobat in the Mew matchups. It's got the Pikachus for stuff like Palkia, which does make it a winning matchup most of the time. Obviously, if you're playing in the London Open as well as just Worlds in general, this is the deck I'm going to play. I don't want to say this is the best deck for that, but I would say because of Pikachu, all of those weird decks like Regigigas, like Solrock and Lunatone, Mad Party, stuff that you might see in the Open but won't necessarily see in Worlds, this deck does really well against. It sort of protects you against any cheese, which is why I'm going to be playing this, because there will be some random decks. People will just be playing stuff for fun, which you should. I'm sort of using the Open to decide whether I try and earn my invite this year. So if I can get some points, some placement, then I'm going to be traveling around all year bringing you guys vlogs. The fingers crossed for me. On the deck itself, though, it is consistent. It runs a few different energies. Obviously, Arceus is the only reason that works. It's got the Bibarel to draw cards, and then it's got the 4 Marnie, the 4 Path. Basically, you want to trap them in Path and hit them with a Marnie and Roxanne later on. Do that against a Mew and you could probably just win a game from that. Even against other decks, it really does depend what they draw, but 4 cards is not many. So yeah, you could just win games like that. They could just brick out, and that's why I like this deck. It does what it needs to do. It's consistent enough to get those matchups and put your opponent on the back foot, which is how I want to play the game. So yeah, this deck, I'm just a massive fan of it. The fact that there's a Flying Pikachu that is competitive as well is just incredible. I was thinking of playing Arceus VStar and Mewtwo V-Union, which I must have played hundreds of games trying to get that to work. I do think it has some merit, and I found a pretty good list, which I probably will bring a deck profile to. I might as well mention now the Mewtwo Miltank list, as I'm not going to be putting it on here. I don't know if it has, other than obviously Sander playing it, I don't know if you can get enough wins in the time that you need to play this deck. I think it's too much of a risk, so I'm not going to suggest it. I do think it is one of the best decks in format, almost impossible to deal with for a lot of decks, but I don't know, I think it's risky playing it, so I'm not going to suggest it to you guys. I would hate for you to play a deck on here and then be like, oh, this was terrible, I can't believe I believe this guy. So yeah, I'm going to steer away from suggesting this one. Obviously, if played right, like Sander does, like other people can do, it's a masterpiece, honestly. But yeah, for someone looking for a deck to play in the Open or even the World Championships, honestly, if you're in the World Championships, you probably don't need this list. You probably have some idea. You've been playing all season, played more than me. So maybe you should make this video. Maybe we should switch places. But yeah, I'm not going to suggest this deck. After Pikachu, I am going to move into obviously the other contender in the format, and that is Mew VMax, the 4 Genesect obviously, and then the 2 Meloetta. Meloetta Donk is the most annoying thing. The amount of games I've lost to that online. I've never actually lost to it or lost to the Meloetta Donk in person. The amount online, it's unreal. Really consistent deck. I would say if you're unsure what to play, go with Mew. If you're playing in the open, go with Mew. There might be a ton of dark stuff because I do think Darkrai has had a rise in popularity, especially online and online tournaments. So I would say be prepared for that. But I don't think it's enough to scare you off. I think because it is so consistent, consistency is always key. If you're unsure what to play, play something that works. Play something that you know you can get your strategy off. And Mew is the epitome of that. It's been around for a while now, so I don't think I really need to explain this deck or why it's so good. But it's definitely still up there. I'd probably put it in 3rd place. Pikachu probably 5th. I would say 4th place. I don't have a deck list for it because we haven't seen it done yet. But it will be some kind of Radiant Charizard. I've been playing around with some lists myself. I've seen it online. You can stream Charizards from as early as like turn 2, 3... depending how you set it up. Obviously, you got the stadium, you can attach, and then you can Raihan and other stuff. Depending on the scenario, it can be absolutely devastating. 250 is not anything to scoff at. I don't know if it will be the Inteleon with stuff like Zeraora, Charizard, and all of that. Probably, because that's a pretty good list. It deals with a lot of stuff quite well. But I do think we'll see it in some capacity, whether that's Arceus, Inteleon, Charizard. There's something there. We will definitely see a Charizard place highly, I think. That's going to be my prediction. Like I said, I don't have a list for it because it hasn't been out in a tournament. Obviously some online ones, but like I say, I don't want to suggest a list that I don't believe is going to work myself. These are all confirmed lists, so comfortable showing those. But let's move on to number 6, which would be Blissey Miltank. Now, I've recently built this for my girlfriend, and it is an absolute monster deck. I hate playing against it. It's denial, unbelievable power out of nowhere. Blissey can get set up so quickly, and then it's just taking one-hit knockouts on everything. Once they get set up, if you can't hit them or one-hit KO them, they've got like 300 health with Cape of Toughness. So it's very difficult to do. They can just sweep the game. I will say this is one of my favorite decks in the format. If I hadn't just made it for my girlfriend, I would definitely be playing this myself. There's so much to love about it. I love that Blissey can pile on all those energies. How wacky it looks with like 10 energies attached on the board. I want to play this deck honestly, but I don't want to search out all of these cards again. Blissey's have shot up to like £10. Yeah, it's annoying. It's very annoying. They were like £2 not long ago. I guess with Worlds coming up, it makes sense. But yeah, one of my favorite decks. Just a deck where you can tank out with Miltank. You can clear energy with Yveltal. Or you can just attack with Blissey and take one-hits knockouts. This can play really well into a lot of matchups we spoke about so far. I think it's good into Palkia and Inteleon because it can take one-hit knockouts, which a lot of decks can't. I think it's good against Mewtwo Control because, again, it can get to those knockout level. It's a little more difficult. Obviously, it needs a lot going for it. But also, just look at the price of this thing. $35. This is a budget deck. I would say that's a bit more expensive now because Blissey's have gone up. You don't really need much. This was super easy to make for my girlfriend. Super easy to put together, obviously, with that price there. So if you're looking for a rogue deck to play... Oh, not even a rogue deck. If you're looking for a budget deck to play at the Open, this would be my suggestion. Obviously, the only downside is you need to run Dunsparce because Arceus has a target on its back, and unfortunately, Blissey shares the same weakness, meaning that target is also on her. But yeah, absolutely love this deck. Again, one of my favorites in the format currently. Let's take a look at a couple more. I don't know how much impact these are going to have. I feel like Dialga, my next choice, is going to have quite a big one. If you're not sure what it is, basically it's speed Dialga. So you've got Mews, you've got Crobats, you've got Zacians, you've got Greninja. You've got all of this stuff just flying through, drawing as many cards as you can in a turn, playing as many, finding the stuff that you need to get the Star Chronos off. Once you get that off, if you can get that off before they get an attack into your Dialga, you win most games, honestly. Absolutely devastating deck. Obviously a fire weakness. I don't think we'll see much Charizard other than Radiant just because of its weakness to water and Palkia being so dominant. I think this one might surprise some people. It is quick. If it misses what it needs to do or it takes a hit early on, it will lose. So I don't know. I don't think this is going to be one of the top decks, but I think we'll see a few place high enough. Raise a few eyebrows. And if you're playing in the open, I think this deck's perfect. It plays quickly, so you can take knockouts and win games quickly. Obviously, you don't want a slow deck where if you lose, you're obviously not going to have a chance to win it all then. At best, you could draw, which I don't think is ideal. You want to go for those wins. I think those decks will do best in best of threes, obviously, and this is one of them. I would say for the same reason, Darkrai. We've seen that played a lot recently with Pokestop. Obviously, you can get your items out quickly and you can get set up. I've seen Darkrai consistently set up turn 2, 3, hit him for like 300 plus damage, which is just insane. I think in the London Open, we'll see a ton of that. So maybe be a little aware if you're going to play Mew. Other than that, I don't think we'll see it in the World Championships. Maybe 1 or 2, I might be wrong. Maybe on day 2, we'll see some people bust it out. I don't know. Again, another really cool deck. One more I would be remiss in, is that the right word? I should mention it anyway, is Ice Rider Calyrex. Obviously, it just pairs up with Palkia. Slightly different. And I think, again, one of the best Pokemon in the format right now. I don't think Calyrex gets enough respect. Obviously not Shadow Rider. Shadow Rider sucks. Ride of the High King is okay, but Max Lance is where it's at. 250 with a choice belt, you can knock out all the V-Stars in the game currently. I just think it's absolutely devastating. The weakness to Steel is one that's not really going to be hit. Obviously, having 2 different weaknesses is always good in a deck as well. I like this variant. If I was going to play Palkia, I would play this. I do think the other version is better. But again, it's got Inteleon, so bleh. Outside of those decks, though, I don't have lists for these. A few that I should probably mention. Stonjourner is one that I've seen a ton online. It's one that has top tournaments before or come higher than people would expect. Expect it, especially in the open. Obviously, it hits into Blissey and Arceus and other good decks. And it's just really hard to deal with. If you can't knock it out in a turn, you're probably not going to knock it out. Which I feel like a lot of decks have a problem with recently. It's got a ton of ways to reduce damage. I think if I was going to say this deck is going to appear and people aren't going to expect it, it would be that deck. I think it has the power to do so. I think it has the strategy to do so. So keep an eye out for that one. Outside of that, I would love to see Zoroark Control. So the Zoroark Stage 1 deck basically with the new Slowbro. It's got the Seeking, Rabombe, all of that cool stuff. Discard energy and move it around where you don't really want it. I would love to see that place. If I was in Worlds, I don't know if I would risk it because I don't think I'm going to risk it for the Open. But I think it's a really cool deck that you can get into some checkmate situations. I've won a fair few games using that Slowbro. So I would love to see it place. Let me know which decks you want to see in the comments below, which you want to see win it. Is there any decks that are close to your heart that you hope make a big run? I'm going to be watching it live there. Like I say, if you see me around, come say hi. Would love to meet some other Pokemon players. I'll be going with a few friends, but yeah, it's always nice to meet other players because that's why I'm there. I just want to share this hobby with the community and play some games. That's all I've got for this episode though. So if you've enjoyed it, if it's been any help, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, all of the good stuff, and I will catch you in the next one.